Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Jonathan Breeden, to the show today. Jonathan is a family law attorney in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina. He became an attorney in 2000 and started his law firm right out of law school. Breeden Law Office currently has 8 other attorneys working for the company and 11 support staff. Jonathan is from a small town on the North Carolina-South Carolina border called Laurinburg. He went to NC State for undergrad, then the Campbell University for law school. He started his practice doing criminal and family and pretty much switched over to all family in 2007. The law office has experienced exponential growth in the past few years. The company has grown from 3 employees in 2020 to 20 employees. He's worked diligently to build momentum while also dealing with the pandemic. He prides himself on developing effective systems that allow the law firm to scale. I'm excited to have you here, Jonathan. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Marilyn.
Absolutely. I'm excited. So you knew right out of law school that you wanted to work for yourself.
I did. And I actually knew that before I went to law school, which is why I chose to go to Campbell University's law school. At that time, it was in Bowie Creek, North Carolina, about 45 minutes south of Raleigh. It is now in downtown Raleigh, literally a block from the state capitol.
Oh.
And I knew my father was a CPA and had started his own firm when I was a child. And I watched him grow that firm. It never got very big, but I watched the joy that he had in working for himself. And he didn't always make a ton of money. And, there were ups and downs like any other small business. But no matter how many hours he had to work, particularly during tax season, representing small businesses, he never complained about going to work. He loved going to work, and he's 78 years old today and still goes to work every day. Wow. Because he enjoys working for himself. And so I got to see, I didn't get to see a parent go, I don't want to go to work, whatever. My mom was a nurse. She enjoyed being a nurse and helping people. So I was like, I think I want to start my own firm. And my parents had told me that. They're like, you're enough like your father and you have enough opinions about how stuff should be done. You probably should work for yourself. And so they said, we don't care what you do, but more than likely you should probably work for yourself. So I actually knew I wanted to start my own law firm before I went to law school. And I went to Campbell specifically because it had a start your own law firm program and had a very practical trial and in the dirt kind of education, not conflict of laws and the theory of stuff that they teach for it, say in the University of North Carolina or Duke or even Wake Forest, some of the more traditional law schools out there. It was really a trial ad, practical based, a lot of North Carolina law school, and that served me really well.
Now, when you say the practical, did they actually teach you do business and finance and those types of things?
They taught a lot more of it than most law schools. So one of the things that made Campbell unique, and I don't know how much they do this now, but they had a bunch of required classes. So, it took 90 hours to get it to graduate. And when I came through, 70 of them were mandatory. So you only had 20 you got to pick. I think it's a lot more lenient now, 25 years later. I came out in 2000, but they wanted you to take these classes. And one of the classes you had to take was called Lawyers in the Law Firm, which is where they explain to you the structure of law firms and what your role would be in the different types of law firms. And they would bring in speakers from in-house corporate law firms. They brought in people from Womble Bond. At that time, it was Womble Carlisle, the biggest firm, one of the biggest firms in the country, possibly the world now. Now they've merged with the ones out of London and maybe even Spain too. So, and they had solos come in. They had, and they talked about sort of the different structures. And this was a 1L class, and I didn't quite understand it at the time, but I sure as heck paid attention. And, I took an exam on it. They also required you to take a class called Loom, Law Office Management, where they made you look at what the softwares were at the time. And you had to track your time on little green cards, those little, with all the little lines on them and stuff. I forget what you call them, and they made you track your time for like 2 weeks, like just whatever you, and of course, by the time I took that class, I was a 3L. Oh boy, it was not a good scene as far as how much studying I was doing. So, I mean, they did do a good job of that. The structural law firm class at that time was an unaccredited class, and you could take it if you wanted. It was in the afternoons. It didn't have a lot of reading. It was largely just how to build a business plan. Again, the structures of different firms, ways to get business as a small firm, starting out on your own, where to push your office. They were really big, and this is still valid today. Stay out of the cities, right? Like North Carolina has a shortage of lawyers outside of the 8 counties that have the 8 cities of. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so, the big thing now, your listeners are out there, legal deserts is a huge thing right now. And in North Carolina is no different than any other where we got too many lawyers in Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill and Charlotte and Asheville, which is recovering from the hurricane, and, in Greensboro and High Point, like all these great cities, they've got too many lawyers. If you get out of those cities, there's not enough. And so we have these deserts, and a legal desert is defined, I think, by the ABA as less than 1 lawyer for every 1,000 citizens. And I think maybe 80 of the 100 counties in North Carolina would be considered legal deserts right now, but including 2 of the 3, because I'm in Wake where Raleigh is, but my primary offices are in the suburbs. And you would think, golly, the suburbs, but these areas are growing so fast. And the lawyers that live here all work in Raleigh, right? So we don't even have enough, sort of native attorneys in Johnston and Horry County, which is just southeast of Raleigh, and then directly south of Raleigh. In my primary county of Johnston is where I-95 and I-40 meet, 2 of the biggest interstates in the United States. So if you've been down I-95 or been down I-40, you've been right by my office. My office is about 10 miles from where those 2 interstates cross. So it's an interesting thing. But one of the things I did learn in that class was don't go to Raleigh. Like I was a big NC State fan, love NC State, ACC basketball.
Absolutely.
Jordan, Smith, Carolina people, NC State, Jim Valvano. NC State went to the Final Four last year for the first time since I was like, I mean, so I go to NC State, which is in downtown Raleigh, and I was like, they're like, just don't go back there. Like if you just go to the suburbs, there's going to be more work than you could shake a stick at. But if you go into Raleigh, it's going to be difficult. And that is true today. I would tell anybody out there thinking about starting their own law firm, stay out of the cities. If you just go into the suburbs, you're going to be fine because there's not enough lawyers in the suburbs. And I travel around the country talking to other lawyers and meeting with lawyers and stuff. And I hear that constantly wherever I go, that the cities have too many and the suburbs don't have enough. And then, of course, the rural areas have almost none. And that's a whole nother problem that we have to solve at some point.
Well, and I've spoken to attorneys in Houston and Atlanta, and the same thing. They are outside of like the rings, roads, that sort of thing. And another reason is traffic. No one wants to spend, 45 minutes getting into town and then having to find parking. And then, it spends more time on the transit than they are actually in the attorney's office. So, but it's interesting, the legal desert. I love that comment. And you're right. Need to be further out of town so that people can actually get to you. And do you do any or a significant amount of work virtually for people that maybe cannot get to you?
I mean, we, because we do family law and we're advocates and we're in court, we do, because we have the military in Harnett County, Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty now, they've changed the name of it. I think it's the largest Army base in the United States. Is right next to Harnett County in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is one of our counties where we practice in. We do have a fair number of military clients. And so we do sort of try to represent them while they're, serving wherever they are. But we don't do virtual hearings per se. You know what I mean? I know all the bankruptcy hearings now are virtual all over the country. I believe most of the immigration hearings are as well. We do family law, so we're still having to go to court. We're on our feet. We're, sort of battle tested, that kind of stuff. So we probably do the least amount of virtual law of anybody you'll talk to on your podcast.
Okay. Yeah, I do know that there's a couple of counties in California that the family law is almost exclusively virtual. So
And they do more virtual hearings in Raleigh,
Mhm.
where the judges maybe are more technologically savvy and the courthouse has a little bit better technology than they would in some of the other counties. But it's still frowned upon. Judges would prefer not to do it, right?
Right.
When you're doing a virtual hearing, they don't know who's in the room. They don't know if somebody's giving notes or cards or passing things to these witnesses. They struggle to see their body language.
That's what I was going to say. Body language
Make
is
a lot
one.
of decisions. They make more decisions about whether you're telling the truth and what you're saying by just observing you than what you're actually saying, because I think they don't really believe a lot of what you're saying, particularly in family law. I'm just gonna be honest. And so, they can study how people interact with each other. They're very, very observant. It's been my experience.
Mhm.
What's your plan to grow your law firm's sales and profits in 2025? My name is Marilyn Jenkins, and I want to take a quick moment to share something I'm super excited about. It's called the Law Firm Growth Guild. It's your shortcut to mastering marketing and getting more clients. It's sponsored by Law Marketing Zone. If you're a lawyer or a law firm owner who's been feeling overwhelmed, juggling clients, leading your team, and trying to scale without losing your sanity, I get it. It's a lot. That's exactly why I created this online membership community. I've been working with law firms since 2018, and I've worked with and helped hundreds of firms across the U.S. and Canada to grow and scale their firms beyond where they had ever been before. The Law Firm Growth Guild is designed to help you understand marketing strategies and grow your firm smarter and to scale your firm predictably. And here's the best part. It's only a fraction of the price of a cup of coffee daily. My team and I are adding new content weekly, and you can be intentional about your growth and development each week. All of our webinars and workshops are in the community, and a first good workshop is all about setting your vision for your strategy for 2025. We've got workbooks, spreadsheets, and everything to walk you through setting up your marketing plan for 2025. Getting crystal clear on where you're going and how to get there. Imagine walking into this new year with confidence, with a plan, and with the tools to make 2025 into your best year yet. Don't get left behind. Join the community now and jumpstart your growth for 2025 and beyond. Click the link in the show notes or visit checkout.lawmarketingzone.com to find out more and to join the community. Let's grow your firm together. I can't wait to see you on the inside of the Law Firm Growth Guild.
So let's jump to, I love the fact that you started your own firm and being influenced by your father as an entrepreneur and seeing the happiness of that. Clearly you're happy with what you're doing. You've grown from 3 to 20. You hired a coach. What was your mindset? How do you feel that coming in just 4 years, going from 3 to 20 people, how did you do that? And how could our listeners kind of get in that direction?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still a little stunned. You know what I mean? I wanted to do it. I think I'm a little stunned at how fast it's been, the success we've had, that people like you would ask me to be on their podcast. I mean, I'm a little bit of an imposter, but no, it started with me when I got with a company called Post Stolly out of Columbus, Ohio in 2016. I had a website that was not working and I was not getting the leads that I needed to get. And we hired them. And I quickly ended up within a year or two with arguably the number one family law website in all of North Carolina.
Nice.
But I had no earthly idea what to do with the leads or the calls. I had no system. I didn't know what a CRM was, a client relationship manager. I didn't know how to structure a law firm that was growing. I didn't know any of my numbers. So all I knew was at that time, I think I needed to make $40,000 a month to break even.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And every on the first of the month, I got it up. How can I bring in $40,000 to pay the two employees the website, the rent, the power bill, that kind of stuff. I had no earthly idea. I didn't know how many people were setting appointments. I didn't know how many people were showing for appointments. I didn't know how many people were hiring. I didn't know any numbers that would let me know that it was repeatable. But what happened was I had all this debt, like everybody else, business debt, personal debt, student loans, all of this stuff. But I ended up getting enough business because I had this website of me doing it, working 7 days a week, that I was able to get out of it. Within a couple of years, I was making all kinds of money, but I was working all the time. My family wasn't with me. I was literally here 7 days a week. And I was like, I had some associates and I'd basically used as paralegals between 2009 and 2015. I was going to the law school. I was hiring people straight out. Back then, you could get a lawyer for $40,000 because there were too many lawyers and all of that. The people listening that came out during that time, they know how bad it was for attorneys. That is not the case now. But I'd never really used them as associates. I'd never really given them their own cases or let them be independent, provided any training. They would stay a year and then they would move on and go do something else. But in 2019, I began to realize that I had enough that I could support somebody else. And I was able to have my first true associate that knew what they were doing, a very good attorney out of Raleigh. And I almost doubled the business overnight just because I could do more consults and I had somebody that could do that many more cases. And so this was before I found a coach or anything like that. I just started saying, okay, before I even had a CRM, I didn't know what a CRM was at that point. And so that's kind of how it got going. And then with COVID, I began to, right going into COVID, I was growing so fast. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I was still working a ton, but I was making a lot of money. I was like, I need a coach. I need somebody to help me structure this place. I need scripts for the people answering the phones. That was the number one thing I was after, finding a coach. I mean, so menial now when I think about all the things I've learned, but I knew I needed scripts. I needed to be able to answer the phone in a consistent manner.
Right.
And so during COVID, right before COVID, I had found Ernie, the attorney. He's still out there. He's out in New Orleans. He's great for solos and small people. And his whole thing is offshoring everything, technology, that kind of stuff. He's a great podcast, a great program. I signed up to go to his conference in New Orleans in May of 2020. That ended up being canceled, but he did it virtually on this thing called Zoom that I'd never heard of. But I got to hear some really great speakers, in this space during that conference on Zoom. But I realized that I was too big for what he was trying to do. So as you go to look for a coach, find a coach that is focusing on the size that you are. Some, like Ernie the attorney, are focusing on people from 50,000 to about 250, 300. It's really the keep it small, keep it all thing is kind of where he's at. And then I was already more than that, right? At that point, I'm probably doing 500 or 600. You know what I mean? Maybe close to 7. And so I was like, okay, I need something more than. And so I found a coach named Richard James, your practice master out of Phoenix, Arizona. And the good thing was during COVID, I had time to, all these coaches started doing free days, like just sort of teaching for free to promote their products. They had time, they were at their house. And I got to watch him one day talk about the perfect client life cycle. And the perfect client life cycle is how many leads do you have? How many sets did you get? How many people showed up? How many people hired you? How many people paid in full? How many referrals? Going all over again. If you will know those 6 numbers, I don't care who's listening to the podcast, you will learn those 6 numbers, track those 6 numbers. You will then know whether you can repeat the work you're doing and whether you can grow or not.
Fantastic. Wow, that is interesting. So, and my thought is always about when you hire an attorney or hire a coach is look at someone who's at least 2 steps ahead of you. So it sounds like because he knew his numbers and helped you put those things in place, that was the step that you needed.
Right. Because I mean, and then the other thing I learned, being in, that world, and he does quarterly conferences around the country. You go to these conferences and you meet all these other people that are doing the same thing you're doing, right? You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. Right. And so by going to these conferences, I meet people like Bert Diener or Diener Law, which is now an immigration firm that I think's in 4 or 5 states. I get to meet a man named Scott David Stewart out of Phoenix, Arizona Law Group. I get to meet Scott Brown out of South Houston, Texas, right? These are extremely successful family lawyers. Jeff Hughes, Sterling Lawyers out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and in the Chicago suburbs. And so these people were already well in front of me. So not only was I getting coaching, I was getting to become friends with and get mentoring by some people that were way more successful than I ever thought I would be. And we all got the same problems.
Right.
The numbers just bigger. I got the same problems. I have the same problems at 20 employees. I had 3. It's just bigger numbers. And so, it really was a fascinating thing to be able to go through that and learn from Richard James, his son, and his program and all the great attorneys that are in it. And then you also begin to learn when you have a coach, you get to learn about other resources, right? I didn't know what a CRM was. I joined this program looking at scripts because I needed to answer the phone better. But then I quickly learned that you need a client relationship manager so that you can manage your leads. So we ended up, we had Clio Grow there initially. We ended up switching to a company called 4 Eyes, which is owned by Bert Diener and Richard James, which is a version of Salesforce. It's 4 Eyes. I think it's 2 Eyes. It's been pretty good, but there's a lot of other CRMs out there too, like HubSpot and, Clio Grow's gotten a lot better. Manix, I think, good job now as well. So, if you don't have a client relationship manager where you can manage the leads and follow up with them and put them in an email drip campaign, it can be hard to grow there as well, because I would bet that most people listening have enough leads. They're just not managing them properly.
That's correct.
This growth from 3 to 20 employees, the leads really haven't changed, Marilyn. I'm telling you the truth. The first time caller and the leads are about the same, but the business is sextuple.
Yeah. Well, it's the speed to lead. And we talk about that with our clients. We provide a CRM that has text, email, and phone call automations built into it. So we're keeping those leads for our clients engaged while they get them on the phone. But you're right. It's speed to lead. It's making people feel acknowledged and that you are going to call them back in the morning if the lead comes in at 2 a.m. I agree. Everyone needs a CRM. You need that automation in place, but you also need someone that's answering the phone, like you said before, uniformly. The Better Business Bureau said most small businesses miss 67% of their inbound calls. So something as simple as a missed call text back will keep that conversation going or start that conversation.
Yeah. And we answer the phone 24/7 here. I had rooming receptionists for a long time. They got too expensive for me. And so I switched to Lex Reception. And so Lex Reception answers my phones. If we don't get them during the day, they get them and they get them at night and on the weekends and all that. So you never get a voicemail when you call the Breeden Law Office. And that's important because 75-80% of people aren't going to leave a voicemail.
Right.
And so, having somebody answer the phone, tell them that you're going to get back to them, and especially if they're for a crisis, professionally, and get their information and stuff has been very good. There's other answering service out there. Ruby's still there. Smith AI's out there. I think they do a nice job answering legal. I was on their podcast a few weeks ago. I think they're doing a nice job from what I understand. So there's no reason for your phones not to get answered 24/7 now with all of these offsite services that will answer them for you if you miss them.
I agree. Now, and 2, the other thing about that is if people are in crisis, they're going to go to Google and find somebody else, right? So if you've got an answering service, do you have on your Google business profile, you probably have 4 work for each office. Do you have it set that your hours are 24/7?
Yes, I do. And Google constantly is checking that.
Yes.
They check it. And every time I pass, because every time they call me at 2 a.m., somebody answers the phone.
Well, that makes a big difference.
Great if you're not doing it. Google will check and they do. And like I said, do we get a ton of sats and shows off of the calls at 2 or 3 a.m.? No, but you don't have to get many to pay for the service.
That's right. And you never know where those leads are going to go, right? Just because you were available, someone answered the phone and talked to them at 2 a.m. If they didn't move forward with whatever they needed, they may know someone that does and say, look, Breeden was open at 2 a.m. when I had questions. You should call them,
That's true. That's true. And like I said, I think that's the thing. And getting a script, getting the phone answered the same way every time, where you're trying to build a relationship with the people in the call. You know what I mean? Richard James, your practice master, has the 11 steps to a phone call. That was the very first thing I did when I joined this program was I figured out how I wrote my own script from when he said, he gave me an outline, and then so that we could start to build relationships with people. The other thing that we learned to do is offshore employees. I didn't know anything about offshore employees. I now have 4 employees in El Salvador. So within a year of joining the program, I hired my first employee in Mexico and to help answer the phones and stuff like that. Now the phones don't ring at my office at all. All the calls go to El Salvador and they're all processed through there. So you don't have the distraction of the people here, trying to get work done and the phone ringing all the time. And then by hiring these people, I use BBL Communications out of Anaheim, California. They have a call center in San Salvador, El Salvador, where my 4 employees are. And those employees take inbound calls, but those employees make outbound calls. We're making 700 or 800 outbound calls a week. And that's crucial. Remember, I went from 3 employees to 20 with the same number of leads. All I'm doing is a better job of managing the leads I have. This is not magic. I'm not spending a lot more money on advertising. The only thing other than I have this great website is I now do LSAs, local service ad. And we've had some success with those. Not everybody around the country I've talked to has had success with those, but I've had a fair amount of success with them. And I think partly because we do a good job intaking. We build these relationships, we get people scheduled, we get them in, we meet with them, that kind of stuff. So I think, and if they don't hire, we'll follow up with them. And so, we're, in family law, people may not be ready to go, right? This is a very difficult decision. So, we'll keep calling you for 6 months. I'm going to call you till you either die, buy, or hook some.
Well, knowing that you run LSAs through all of your different offices, that makes sense that Google is checking that you are actually open 24/7. Because when you're doing LSAs, you can put certain hours of the day that you want your LSA showing. And I do know some attorneys that do that, and they'll only run it for not lunchtime, not when they're out of the office. And that makes it less effective. Being available, having someone on the phones 24/7 is definitely going to make your LSAs much more cost effective and you'll end up getting better leads that way. Have you noticed with your LSA, are you seeing any of the changes or any changes as they use AI to interrupt or reject some of the fake leads? Have you seen any of that?
I mean, I couldn't get them to accept any of the rejections before they weren't doing it. You know what I mean? I spent the first 6 months of the year not rejecting anything because I didn't want them to put me in some sort of black box. And I started objecting to the ones where people were calling they were looking for ice or something. I don't know. But then you would get them where they would call and it was clearly out of the area or not a subject matter. And then they would just deny because they were judging when you were challenging them, they were using AI to determine whether they were going to give it to you or not. So when they said you really couldn't challenge them anymore, they were going to make them. I don't even pay attention to it now. You know what I mean? It is what it is. I've got a budget. I'm willing to spend whatever it is. And I don't want to get into nitpicking over, they charged me $75 and somebody called about a case in California. It does happen. Are they giving me the credits? I don't even pay attention. Maybe I should, but it's not worth arguing with them. I don't have the bandwidth really to focus on. I've got some friends who, they're a lot bigger than I am. They really focus in on this. They've got some people in the Philippines who are really studying it, but I am not now. I just accept whatever the bill is, and I'm happy to have it because I'm making 6, 7, 8 to 1 on initial retainers most months on LSAs.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, like you said earlier, know your numbers and you'll know whether you're ROI positive or not on that.
Right. And I don't even go back and look at total value, right? I'm just looking at what are the initial values. You know what I mean? And then I could probably extrapolate out over my average case value and all of that, how much I'm actually making. But I'm just focusing on every month. Okay, how many hires did we get? What was the initial retainers that we received off of the LSA calls? And the thing is, we have a lot of them. We spend a lot of money on LSA, and a lot of them, the vast majority of them are not good. They're people with no money. They're looking for free work, but that's the majority of the calls I get anyway.
Right.
So I'm paying for them, but I'm still shifting down, to the bottom of the funnel here to where I can find somebody who can afford the service and likes what we're offering.
Well, I think you have a more logical view of that. You know that not all leads are going to be good. That was one of the little things that I struggle with new clients. We do paid ads for our clients as well as SEO. We have full service digital marketing. And when an attorney comes in and we start generating leads for them, they're like, well, 70% of these are not good. Well, that's typical, plus the timing might be wrong. But I had a client in October close $89,000 worth of cases, 23 cases. in 1 month. When they came to us, they were doing 4. So it's, but that was only 25% of the leads. So there's 75% that weren't qualified. And it's just the way it's going to be, but you do your best with that script and you talk to them and qualify them and move on.
I mean, we probably set less than 20% of first time callers because we charge for consults and, that's $250. People say they don't have it. They do, but they don't want to give it to us over the phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I'd love to see it get higher than that. If I went to free consults, I probably could set a whole lot more, but I'm not in a position to do that right now because I don't have the bandwidth to all those consults. So, but yeah. So, I get it. It is a numbers game. And the vast majority of leads and the vast majority of calls are not going to be people that you're going to be able to help or that are going to be able to afford for you to help them, particularly in family law where they have to pay for you to actually do the work. It's not injury, that's its own separate thing. I don't know anything about marketing injury, but family law, with the, focusing on the maps, focusing on putting out video content. I have a podcast now called Best of Johnson County, which is largely me interviewing community members, community leaders, small business owners, stuff like that. But every 4th or 5th episode, I'll answer family law questions. We have that out there. So we're constantly putting stuff on YouTube, making YouTube videos. YouTube's owned by Google. Google likes to see stuff on YouTube, that content, that kind of stuff. So, we hired a SEO company, SEO, just the YouTube videos out of San Francisco, California. That's been fascinating. So, there's a lot of different things you could do, but you got to be doing stuff constantly, right? You have to be studying your numbers. You have to get this CRM. You got to have a way to communicate with these leads. I would tell you to make outbound phone calls, but if you don't want to make outbound phone calls, at least answer the inbound phone calls correctly. Be available. You know what I mean? Like, Joey Coleman wrote the book in 2018, Never Lose a Customer Again. And, and that's still out there. It's a great book. He just wrote Never Lose an Employee Again in 2023. I've gotten to meet him twice. He's a fascinating guy. He's a recovering lawyer. But what he says is absolutely true. The bar for customer service for lawyers is laying on the ground. To raise that bar, you're going to stand out in your community and you're going to be successful if you just try. You know what I mean? Like, I spend a lot of time trying to mastermind my customer experience. 80 to 85% of the cases, the outcome is decided before they ever walk in the door. Or do they drink too much? Do they use drugs? Do they cheat on their wife? Do they beat their wife? Whatever happened, right? Are they a good parent? Are they a bad parent? Do they have a place to live? All of these things, largely, it's done before they get here. So I have a little bit of an effect on the outcome, but I have a 100% effect on whether they got value for the money they spent and whether they had a good experience with this office. And that's where I try to focus, is so they had a good experience, so I can get the 5-star reviews, so they can tell other people, so that more people will call. And, as you get bigger and you charge more money, you're going to get some 1 stars, largely because of fees. That's the ones we get. And sometimes the outcome doesn't go the people's way because of their behavior, and they blame that on you because they can't be individually responsible for how they got to where they were. But, if you get more 5 stars than 1 stars, and we do, you know what I mean? It's that thing too, because it's telling the community, and we answer every review. I don't think it's good or bad.
I was going to ask.
And I answer every single review. And I can't defend myself under the ethics rules the way I want to defend myself. But, when you're writing those responses to a review that might not be positive, you're writing it for the next customer, not for the person who wrote the review. And so I like to focus on saying stuff like, especially if it didn't go their way, judges focus on all actions of the parties and all communications, positive and negative, between the parties in making a custody decision. Now, I think if you're reading that as your future customer, that this client left a bad review might have been a little bit of a butthole, which he was, which is why he didn't want. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. But that's the thing. You want to answer the reviews, the bad ones and the good ones, and you want to be answering the review with focus on the next person reading it. And you could try to learn too if you truly messed up.
Right.
Not perfect here. Sometimes we do mess up, but a lot of times it's people that are upset about ultimately, even though we won the case, or they don't like the outcome because the outcome was because of their behavior.
Yeah. Well, and the replying to them, again, replying to each review for that next customer gives that engagement that Google wants. They want to see that you care about the future customer, the user experience. So this has been an enlightening conversation. I really enjoyed your energy and your story of where you come from and how you're handling and customer first. Thinking about the people that are listening to this episode, what would you like the biggest takeaway that you would hope the listeners would take from this?
I think that they probably have enough leads that they're just not managing them correctly. That would be the number one thing I would think. They need to figure out how to get the phones answered consistently. Make sure they have a Google My Business profile. If they don't have that, make sure you've got a website. Make sure that everything is consistent. The branding is consistent. The phone numbers are consistent across all of the different sites. That your name is the same across all the different sites. These are the basics that anybody can do. Doesn't cost anything. Doesn't cost anything to get the phone answered right. Get some scripts, get some coaching. You know what I mean? Reach out to Richard James, your practice master, or any of the other many coaches that are out there that help people. There are a lot of great coaches out there. Everybody's got a coach. Michael Jordan's got a coach. Serena Williams has a coach. Jonathan Breeden has a coach. I mean, do those things. And like I said, you don't have to spend a ton of money, but I think you've got to make a decision that you're going to be better today than you were yesterday. And doing the same thing over and over is not going to get you better. And making the decision not to improve is a decision whether you realize it or not.
Well said. Very well said. I know my listeners are going to want to connect with you and reach out to you. Where can they reach you? Where would be the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah, my email address is Jonathan, Jonathan, BreedenLaw.com, BreedenLaw.com. My website is BreedenFirm.com. Why I had to switch, that's a whole nother podcast. But anyway, my website's BreedenFirm.com. You can reach out to me there. I'm on LinkedIn at Jonathan Breeden. I'm on Twitter at Breeden Law NC. So I can be found anywhere. Reach out through my podcast, Best of Johnson County. It's got lots more social medias than I do. But yeah, I'd be glad to talk to anybody about how I've done it and answer any questions they have. It's been a fascinating journey. It's a journey that's not over. And every day is a new day. And we're just trying to provide a better customer service to people. And if you will focus on your employees and providing a customer service, the rest of it will take care of itself.
Well said. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate your time. And thank you for being with us today.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Leadership in Law Podcast. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of law firm owners out there facing similar challenges and striving for the same success. Head over to our website at lawmarketingzone.com. From there, connect with other listeners, access valuable resources, and stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep leading with vision and keep growing your firm.